Hi, this is Robert Farrington. It's my informative speech on the basics of ice fishing for walleyes. I'll introduce my audience. There's Mark, Julie, and Katie. How would you like to catch a tasty walleye like this through the ice? If you have the right equipment and know-how, it can be quite simple. Ice fishing is very appealing to people who would otherwise not fish, partly because you don't need a boat. I will go over the equipment you need, plus some extras. I'll also describe some of the techniques you can use and how to pick a location for fishing. First, I'd like to go over some of the equipment you'll need. First, you'll need to get through the ice somehow, and for that, I use a gas-powered hand auger. Some people cannot afford this. There's also other methods of doing it, like a hand auger, where you would just use your hands in a screwy motion to get through the ice. Or you can use an ice chisel, which is by far takes the longest because you have to chip out a hole in the ice like such. Next thing you'll need, after your holes are open, you'll need some sort of tool to get the slush out of the holes. So I would recommend an ice scoop like this. It has holes in the bottom and it's very easy for collecting the ice out of the holes and discarding on the ice. Next, you'll need some kind of rods to fish through the ice. I suggest a small rod reel like this. This makes it easier, and if you have a larger fish on, it has a nice drag system which allows the line to come out, and you can take up and release line very easily. Some old schoolers of Gowin use tip-ups. This is good because you can walk away from it and it still has a line in the water. I will demonstrate how to use this later. Next, there's a lot of electronics that you can use to ice fish. You need to be able to figure out what depth the fish are at. So I recommend using a sonar flasher such as this. Vexilar makes a quality flasher, and it lets you know the bottom and if there's any fish there. Another electronics you can use are GPS like this. I'll go over that further later as well because it's how I use my map. And then also, if you're going to be out on the lake during ice fishing season, it's going to be very cold. So you're going to need some sort of ice fish house or shelter. I have a portable ice fishing house which has canvas sides on it, and it allows it to be heated inside. As you can see, my audience members are utilizing my heater right now. Another thing I would recommend when you're out ice fishing is if you catch a fish, such as a tip-up, a lot of times they'll have the hook way down their throat, and they all have teeth. All these fish I like to fish for, especially walleyes. And you need needle-nose pliers to get the hook out. Then you have your mini buckets for storing fish and minnows. Next, I would like to talk about locating walleyes. For potential lakes, you can always go to websites. Like in Minnesota here, we have the DNR websites which tell you what species of fish are in the lakes and much other quality information. Now, as far as locating them on the lake, you're going to need to find the right structure. I have drawn out a picture of a potential lake, and I'll show you how to locate them or point out certain parts of the structure where they congregate. This is point structure right here. That's a classic walleye structure, very easy to locate. You start, the walleyes would be deeper during the day and they move up during the night to feed on the structure. Another good piece of structure to fish would be an inside turn of the weed line, where it's shallower, deeper out in the lake and deeper over here, right by shore. Another good spot to fish is out here in the main lake basin where it's deep, and then it'll come up on some sort of structure here. We call that a bar. Fish will like to move up on there too. Another thing to consider is the time of year you're fishing. Many states have seasons on which walleye can be fished. Like for instance, here in Minnesota, March fish is closing for walleyes. And it's usually not as good anyway later in the year, because as the water gets colder and colder, the fish's metabolism slows down. Alright, now I'll go over some techniques to be used for walleye fishing. What a lot of people like to do is jigging, where you put on some sort of jig on your fishing reel and you set it down, and you just go, you hop from hole to hole and you just jig near the bottom. It's a very fast way of locating the fish, and it's probably the most popular of serious ice anglers. Next thing you'd like to use is a tip-up. As I said before, this allows you to fish and move away. You can cover a lot of area with your lures. What you do is you set this, if this were a potential hole here, what you do is you put your minnow on the end of this line and you set it to near the bottom, and you can set the tip up right on the hole like this, and then set the flag down like this, so when the fish hits, the reel will spin at the bottom. Therefore, the flag will go up. That's how you know you have a fish. Another thing I'd like to go over is a technique called dead staking. A lot of anglers like to do is hook on a live minnow by the back and set it down and place it near the bottom, and they use a float to suspend it anywhere from 4 to 10 inches off the bottom is usually the best. Then your minnow can swim freely, and that's probably the most effective way to catch walleyes. Because when you're jigging, they can see your flaws in the jig, and if they're less aggressive, they'll be more apt to hit a live minnow. So, I've told you about the equipment, the techniques, and some of the spot locating techniques. Now, if you go out there and employ some of the things I've talked about today, hopefully you can bring in some of the best eating freshwater fish around. Thank you.
Yay!